everybody, and thanks for coming. First, I want to, as the co-chair of the Men's Health Caucus, welcome everyone, and really thanks for attending as we kind of explore where we're going with brain injury, not only for our war fighters, but also for our athletes. Obviously, I have a connection with athletics and brain injury, but also myself now, also sitting on HASC MBA. The correlation and the people we can bring together and the discussions we have, it's truly just an honor to be able to get all the people in the same room moving in the same direction. There's, I think, so much unknown about where we're going in brain injury and what the treatments are, how we identify them, and once we get to that point, we can really start to have a serious discussion on preventing them. And that we only get that through these panel discussions and educating all of you on where we're at and where we need to go. It is the unfortunate position we're in, I think, right now with the conflict we've been in the last 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, of the prevalence of brain injury and what we've done to our men and women that wear that flag on their shoulder every day. And it's unfortunate that we're at that situation, and obviously a little bit behind the eight ball, but I think we're moving in the right direction. And these injuries, they're not visible, I think, a lot of times. And I deal with it in the VA all the time, whether it is the true injury, but the behavioral stuff that comes afterwards. And I know Kristen Winsky has personal experience with it, and I know many of our colleagues in professional sports, frankly, people younger than, my age, quite frankly, can't function in society anymore because of sports-related ones. And it's another level when you take it to the military with the IED blasts and the concussions and brain injuries that come from that. So it is just one of those injuries that is, I think, out there that we know where we need to go. I think it's just a matter of time, and great people like the panel out here doing their work day in and day out. But I think number one, like any other illness, any other injury, first of all is awareness. And being able to promote it and have focus on it, and true leaders out there pushing researchers, pushing advocates. And a lot of times I think what we miss is the outside groups, the private groups that can really help in all this. And as we generate awareness through briefings like this, we get them attached, we get people knocking on our doors and making phone calls and saying, hey, I'm interested in that, I've had a personal connection, and I have a group of people that are willing to help, whether it's financially or, again, throughout promoting it. So with that, I want to introduce Scott Williams, who's the Vice President of the Men's Health Network, who has been a huge part not only on this issue, but we've done a lot with prostate cancer. Another big issue that we've tackled in the Men's Health Network aspect of. I want to introduce him and thank him for his leadership from the Health Network aspect. So, Scott Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Congressman Brown. On behalf of the Men's Health Network, welcome to today's briefing. It's been a pleasure working with Congressman Runyon and the Congressional Men's Health Caucus to make today possible. We very much appreciate your support, and thank you so much for your leadership and efforts really to bring this briefing and this topic to light here at today's meeting. I'd also like to thank Dr. Eleanor Perfetto of Pfizer, who invited us to attend a recent briefing on this very subject and important topic, and for all of her work to address this key issue in her day-to-day job, every day trying to address the impact of head trauma. Men's Health Network is committed to work with members of the military, with veterans, current and former athletes, and Congress to raise awareness of this issue, as well as to discuss them and to address ways that we can move forward. Before I turn over the program, I wanted to recognize 3 staffers who worked tirelessly to bring this program to light today. I'd like to thank Jennifer Shirley, I'd like to thank Kara Webster, and I'd like to thank Rachel Provost for all of their work and their efforts to make this briefing possible today. Now it gives me great Thank you all very much for what you do on a day-to-day basis to make this possible. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce a friend and colleague, Dr. Tom Berger, who's the Executive Director of the Veterans Health Council, who's also going to offer a brief welcome for today's program. Dr. Berger.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Veterans Health Council of Vietnam Veterans of America and our partner, Men's Health Network, I want to especially thank Congressman Runyon for his assistance in helping to organize today's briefing. Although the methods and setting up everything, the staffers, but it's the leadership by Congressman Runyon that's really helped. As a Vietnam veteran, I strongly urge you to pay attention to Dr. McKee's presentation because according to the military own researchers, more than 300,000 U.S. veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that's 20% of the almost 1.7 million who've served, have sustained a mild traumatic brain injury, also known as a concussion, with the majority of these folks going untreated. So Dr. McKee's presentation can illustrate the long-term outcomes of such injuries. The care of veterans who have any war-related injury, but especially TBI, must be our concern of the highest priority. I hope that today's briefing will help you understand the importance of this issue across the board for all Americans. Thank you.
Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Chris Nowinski, who's going to be our moderator for today. Chris is the co-founder and the executive director of the Sports Legacy Institute. Chris is a former WWE wrestler, a Harvard football player, and author of Head Games, Football's Concussion Crisis. With that, our moderator, Chris, please come on up.
Thank you. Well, thank you to Congressman Runyon, Mr. Williams, Dr. Berger, and our hosts, the Congressional Men's Health Caucus and the Men's Health Network. I'm honored to serve as the moderator of today's panel, emerging research and head injuries, what's happening to our war and sports heroes. This is a question that I personally started asking back in 2003 when I received a concussion while wrestling with WWE that caused 5 years of post-concussion syndrome and ended my dream job of traveling the world pretending to fight people. Yes, if wrestling isn't real, let's get that out of the way right now. But brain injuries, no matter where they're suffered, are very real. And our military service members and our athletes of all ages are at risk. During my recovery, I learned that brain injuries can have devastating consequences in the short term, but also new research is emerging they can have devastating consequences in the long term. That research focuses on a disease called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. We are going to learn from from a very prestigious panel today. But first, we're lucky to have the world's expert on CTE pathology, Dr. Ann McKee, with us here. Everyone here is now familiar with the acronyms TBI for traumatic brain injury and PTSD for post-traumatic stress disorder, and are often combined in the term TBI/PTSD.